But is comedy dead? And the one area I want to kind of talk about is the idea of being offended and the idea of punching up and punching down.
So before we get into that, can I do a lead up?
Sure.
So comedy obviously isn't dead. It's never going to be dead. There's always going to be court jesters out there who want to make other people laugh or get laid or something. There's always going to be people who, if there's going to be magicians, there's going to be comedians. The difference now between when I was doing comedy is that there's less of a comedy industry and fewer outlets. So in my time, the records was a big deal. Audio, comedy magazines. You had Spy Magazine, National Lampoon, the British one, Private Eye.
Yeah,
you could make a living writing for National Lampoon or getting onto I Spy. There was
let's throw Dr. Demento out there while we're at it.
Sure, Dr. Demento. So there was a industry of comedy. Nothing happens in a vacuum. You Americans think of, British stand-up, British sketch comedy, Monty Python. There were 100 other British sketch comedians, many of them actually well-known, like the Goodies, in the UK. Nothing happens in a vacuum. You do not get just one individual or one group just coming out of nowhere. There were at least 100 comedy groups because Second City, Toronto was the home of a lot of the SCTV crew, not the Chicago gang. It was Toronto SCTV Toronto that populated SCTV. The Andrea Martins, the Martin Shorts, the
John Candy.
John Candies, Dan Aykroyd wasn't in it. So anyways, the point was there was lots of sketch comedy when the Frantics hit their stride and made an industry for themselves. Because there was sketch comedy, there was actually an interest in sketch comedy at the festivals like Just for Laughs and on TV. TV wanted a sketch comedy group. We got a radio show on CBC Radio called Frantic Times. We did 120 episodes. We were getting 500,000 people listening to us every episode each week. That's on radio. We could travel the country in every 400-seat soft seater right across the country and sell it out because of our radio series. There was TV. Every single comedian who were on the stand-up comedy tour, they all wanted to be the Gabe Kaplan, Welcome Back, Kotter. They all wanted to have their own sitcom. Sitcom was a very big end goal. You need goals. You can't just be a goddamn stand-up your entire life and grind through every goddamn stupid shithole through the country and actually enjoy your life. You can't. It's a really horrible life. And that can't be the pinnacle. So if movies are gone, sitcoms are gone, albums are gone, and all you're left with is maybe getting a special on Netflix. If that's your sine qua non, there's no industry. So that's the problem, is that we do not have a wide and deep comedy industry. That's our biggest problem right now. So from that perspective, comedy is dead-ish.
Yeah. I mean, I will slightly disagree. Okay, and it's more adding to the fact that I think the idea of comedy, what comedy is, the way society views comedy, with the way the internet views comedy today, has killed comedy. It's not funny anymore. We've lost the ability to make people laugh. And I'll give you an example. I've been doing improv comedy for 30 years. It was, I kind of blame Del Close for this, but it started with this Herald thing.
Okay, I can do a Herald.
And I'll preface this by saying, in around 2010, the question amongst the improv community, and I was definitely posed this question, but the question was, who is comedy for? Is it for the audience or is it for the comedians? And the majority of the people who in the improv community who were asked that question, majority of them said it's for the improviser. It's not for
No.
the audience.
No.
Yeah.
For the audience.
Yeah, it's for the audience. It's for the people paying you.
Correct.
To do what you want to do.
You have a
And that's
job.
why you don't have an audience at your Herald show. You know, and you know, I'm very fortunate to have found an improv show in San Diego that it's a 100-seat theater.
Nice.
For the most part, you know, we'll sell out 70 to 100% every week.
Nice.
Yeah, it's you know, it's kind of nice to perform in front of an audience. You know, and the key to what we do is the fact that we've not changed over 30 years, over 50 years, in the way we do our comedy, and the approach we take it. That this show is for our audience and it's not for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, you know, this is the reverse that has happened with this generation of comedy writers and comedians and actors and people claiming to be in the comedy industry, is that we don't know how to make people laugh anymore, or we're afraid to make people laugh out of punching down, punching up, making them feel offended. You know,
well, some of it too is, I mean, I can only talk for myself. Being part of the Jewish community, you know, a lot of non-professionals who are funny because Jews are just funny in many odd ways. So it's not an unnatural step to then go see Jackie Mason, a professional funny Jew. You know what I mean? Like everyone around you, your family, everyone is kind of funny. Comedy is actually something that isn't foreign to you. So you don't go see Jackie Mason or Red Skelton or any of these people. Now I'm really going back. Because it's a unique and different experience. It's a better experience than what you're generally used to. So this is things don't grow out of a vacuum. It's always nice to have these touchstones. One of the problems too is ethnocentricity. You are much better off, let's say you go into a club, and one of the best stand-up nights I had was going into a Newfoundland club. Newfoundland is a island. It's ethnocentric. It's like 99% white. They are fishermen and hard scrabble people. They live on this giant rock that's freezing 11 months of the year and beautiful for 1 month. So you go into an audience and they all have the same experience. So you can do jokes that way. I can, you can talk about townies and baymen, and they all understand it. Now you go into a comedy club someplace in the United States, you've got 100 people from 100 different backgrounds. None of them have anything in common. And you go, Saran wrap. What a bitch, eh? I mean, now everything's reduced down to the most basic things that you think they're going to know about. And you swear a lot, and you talk about the body parts that at least the two sexes have.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'll tell you what killed late night comedy. It's the constant Trump's a racist joke. The jokes were always, it was always about Trump. It was always about him being a racist. And it wasn't even clever. It was, here's a racist story. We got to inject Trump into it somehow.
Yep.
And I will tell you,
I agree, completely agree. Trump killed stand-up.
Yeah, Trump almost killed improv because when he got elected, I performed with a lot of white liberals, and when he got elected, oh boy, it was like it was so the atmosphere was so dour, and being being ironically one of the few people of color and definitely one of the very few conservatives. It was just a tough time to get through, and it was just like, keep your mouth shut. You're doing this for terrible. Yeah,
but that's there's even there's a routine in that where one person, I mean, you're on stage and you're a bunch of sketch comedians, and one person goes, I've got a confession to make. I'm coming out. Oh my God, what is it, Alan? I voted for Trump. Oh, we knew it. We knew all. I mean, there's comedy to be gotten from that. I had an argument with a very, very good lefty stand-up comedian, and I don't talk with her anymore, but I said, nothing that you're doing about Trump are jokes. All you're doing is describing the dumb thing he's doing, and then your punchline is fuck Trump. Yeah. And then your lefty audience goes, yeah. And there's clap thing, you know, the new thing where everyone is clap thing. They're not laughing, they're clap.
Yeah. Davina Duckworth says, because they only receive clapter, not real laughter, but approval for the sentiment.
I call it clap thing. So and that's the worst thing you can have is clap thing. And I mentioned to her, if you're a real stand-up, you go into a lefty audience, do a whole pro-Trump routine, and get them laughing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's your chance to be subversive.
Correct. Right. Yes, exactly right. There is subversive going the other way. So yeah, to me, I'm a contrarian. I would do stuff like that. That would be exactly because I'm an asshole. That would be exactly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're similar. I mean, that's kind of that's often my approach to improv is to, you know, it's to this has been my formula for comedy for the longest time. This is kind of how I base things. But it's the idea of I stand on stage and I create a scene that the audience can connect with, which is why it's about life at home, your work life, your friends, dating, marriage, all that stuff. And you just create a scene that they can connect with. And then you allow this improv game to come in and subvert that entire scene.
Sure.
And that's where at least the laughter in improv comedy comes from. Sure.
Yeah, without negating though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a fine route to go. I always like going into the lion's den and poking the lion. That's I get into trouble for that. I did a bit twice. Once it worked well, once it didn't, where I went out and I said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mystery Theater. One of you is the murderer, and the job is for you to find out which one of you is the killer. Who is it? And then someone had a gunshot off stage, and I fell to the ground, and I stayed there for 15, 20 minutes not moving. And one time, it was just people were dying from laughter. And then the other time is, get off the fucking stage. Like, what's happened? Get up. Are you doing anything? Like, then I chickened out after that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to kind of back on subject, it just seems like that we've gotten to that point where, you know, there are things weirdly, there are things you can't talk about it. And he used to be president. And
well, yeah. I mean, you can be much more intellectual about it, I think, than people give other people credit for. I know in the UK, which does not have such a respect for stand-up, being a right-wing, let's call it a right-wing conservative stand-up, your career is dead. Because you go to a club, one person complains, and then the comedy club owner calls you up and says, I can't book you anymore. Yeah, because one person complained.
Absolutely. So
it's a little less than that in the United States because you have such a great history of stand-up. But is comedy dead? I think
I think we forgot how to do good comedy. I think we allow fear to guide to keep us from pushing the limits to find out what is funny and what isn't funny.
But on the other hand, if you know how to write, you could probably go out and write something that doesn't need it. What's his name? Jim. He was a very large comic who white comic who did black routines. It was just hilarious.
I don't know who that is.
I'm trying to remember. And he died, unfortunately. Yeah. Very, very funny guy. And I'll try to remember his name. And
by the way, Chris Gore is in the chat. Did they talk about Velma yet? We're getting there.
We'll get
this. All roads lead to Velma, and we will.
I think it's not dead. We're just missing a lot of really good venues to show the variety of comedy that could be available. I mean, we're not doing gentle movies like Bringing Up Baby or the Kind Hearts and Coronet. We're not doing The Man Who Came to Dinner. We're not doing the Arsenic and Old Lace.
Yeah.
What's his name? Ivan Reitman tried to resurrect the old style Hollywood gentle comedy with the movie called Dave. Do you remember Dave?
Yes, I remember Dave.
It's one of my favorite all-time movies.
Yeah, there was even a Three Stooges remake that
yes,
from the Zucker brothers.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I'll say this. I think the venues are there. I think I mean, it's like, when was the last time you laughed? You deeply laughed at a movie or a TV show? It's few and far between. Last year,
whose line is it anyway? I'm always howling at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think American Fiction was the funniest movie last year. It made me laugh deeply.
Great movie.
Yeah, and The Holdovers, another subversive comedy right there.
Yep.